In 1968, Czechoslovakia saw a brief season of hope known as the Prague Spring. Led by Alexander Dubček, the movement aimed to bring socialism with a human face, offering more freedom of speech, press, and expression. For a few months, the people enjoyed this newfound liberty, but the Soviet Union viewed these reforms as a threat. In August, Soviet tanks invaded, crushing the Prague Spring and restoring strict communist rule. Though the dream was short-lived, it became a symbol of resistance. That same year, amidst the turmoil, a future notorious figure was born, Radovan Krejcir, who would go on to become an infamous Czech fugitive involved in organized crime. Radovan Krejcir was born in Dolní Zukov, a village in the Czech Republic, on the 4th of November 1968. His mother, Nadezhda Krejcirova, was a successful businesswoman and one of the wealthiest women in the country. His father, Lambert, was a member of the Communist Party during the Socialist era. Krejcir graduated from the University of Ostrava as an engineer. He married Katerina Krejcirova, a beauty with black hair and green eyes, who was 8 years his junior. They had 2 children, Denis, who was born in 1992, and Damien, born in 2009. By the time he was 21, Krejcir had a business selling food, drinks, and cigarettes, and, allegedly, Smarties. Like his mother, he had entrepreneurial flair and his business flourished, developing into a network of companies trading in all sorts of goods, particularly fuel. Krejcir had amassed a fortune by the time he was 30, most of it made during the wave of state industry privatization that followed the 1989 Velvet Revolution, which saw the overthrow of the communist government in the former Czechoslovakia. He flashed his wealth around, acquiring numerous properties and luxury cars. His home was a villa near Prague, a luxury 2,000 square meter estate partially carved into a hillside, estimated to have cost $15 million. But it didn't take long before Krejcir was in trouble with the law. Slowly, the image of a successful young businessman became tarnished as it emerged that he had been infiltrating the Czech criminal underworld. Police investigations were opened against him for fraud, tax evasion, and counterfeiting. His company, which imported oil, mainly from Germany and Russia, was accused of not paying taxes and owed the state millions of Czech crowns. Krejcir was also accused of various financial crimes, such as transferring huge sums of money to the Virgin Islands to avoid paying tax. He was first arrested in 2002 and spent 7 months in jail before being released on a technicality. He was arrested again in September 2003 and spent a year in custody for loan fraud. He and his accomplices were suspected of stripping a company known as Technology Leasing of its assets. In 1996, Krejcir acquired possession and control of shares that he was contractually obliged to return to a company called Frymis. He failed to return the shares, causing damage of approximately 75 million Czech crowns, approximately 30 million rand. Much later, he was eventually convicted on a charge of fraud relating to these shares and sentenced to 6.5 years in prison, which was later reduced on appeal to 6 years. He was also alleged to have been one of the organizers of customs duty evasion by a fuel importer registered in the Czech Republic. According to SARS investigators, on the 3rd of December 2012, he was convicted for his involvement in absentia and sentenced to 11 years imprisonment and a fine of 3 million Czech crowns. Krejcir was also charged with having ordered and organized the abduction of a businessman, Jakub Konečný, who was allegedly forced to sign blank promissory notes and other documents in Krejcir's presence. He was convicted and sentenced to 6.5 years imprisonment for blackmail. The fraudulent activities were one thing, but the pile of dead bodies that started to accumulate around him was more concerning. A key witness in a tax evasion case against Krejcir, Peter Sebesta, was found unalived with a cartridge in his hand, a typical warning from the Czech mafia. Krejcir was arrested in 2002 when he spent a few months in jail before being released. He was found guilty of crimes in his home country years later, after he had fled the Czech Republic. During his first stint behind bars in 2002, his father, who owned a printing business, mysteriously disappeared. A well-known and influential football club owner, Jaroslav Starka, was arrested in 2006 for the murder. Police believed Lambert had been kidnapped to force his son to pay up his business debts. Some believe Lambert had a heart attack when he was bundled into the trunk of the kidnapper's vehicle. His body was never found, and Krejcir said he believed Czech state agents dissolved him in a vat of acid. The so-called godfather of organized crime in the country, František Mrázek, was unalived in a professional hit in January 2006, when a sniper shot him outside his office building. Czech media pointed fingers at Krejcir, saying he blamed Mrázek for his father's death. Some years later, just before midnight on the 18th of June 2005, 20 balaclava-clad security police and state prosecutors entered Krejcir's villa. They were investigating a tip-off that there were plans to unalive a customs official who was a witness in one of the fraud cases they were investigating against Krejcir. The media reported that Krejcir watched them as they conducted the search operation, following the police as they searched his mansion. A few hours later, the police realized he was gone. It was widely reported that he had asked to go to the bathroom and escaped through a window. However, Krejcir later said that corrupt police officers had allowed him to leave. He fled Czech. His first stop was the tropical archipelago of the Seychelles, a place known for its luxurious beaches but also with a history of granting refuge to fugitives. Krejcir had previously obtained citizenship there and used this to his advantage, evading Czech authorities for several years. Despite his initial respite, Krejcir's activities continued to draw international scrutiny, making it difficult for him to stay in Seychelles long-term. In 2007, Krejcir made another daring move, this time to South Africa, where he hoped to establish a new criminal empire. Using forged documents and leveraging the weak systems of border control, Krejcir entered South Africa and began embedding himself into the country's underworld, where he resided in the eastern suburb of Johannesburg in Bedfordview. On the 1st of December 2009, a significant development unfolded in Radovan Krejcir's criminal saga. Alekos Panai, a banker, came forward and made a damning statement that implicated Krejcir in a large-scale money laundering scheme. Panai revealed that Krejcir had been orchestrating intricate financial operations to move illicit funds, laundering them through various businesses and financial institutions. This statement further entangled Krejcir in international criminal networks, linking him to fraudulent activities not just in South Africa, but potentially across borders. Despite such revelations, Krejcir managed to continue evading law enforcement, with the full extent of his operations remaining a mystery to investigators for years. On the 5th of December 2009, Kevin Trytsman, a private investigator, was shot at his attorney's office. Trytsman made a living from information peddling and claimed that he could help people with legal difficulties. Several revealed that Radovan Krejcir spent 500,000 rand getting help from Trytsman, but with apparently unsatisfactory results. His attorney, George Michaelides, confessed to shooting Trytsman, which he claims was in self-defense. Shortly after the incident, Michaelides said that he had received a strange visit from George Luca, an associate of Krejcir, who congratulated him on unaliving Trytsman. He subsequently invited him for lunch with Krejcir, who wanted to show his appreciation for unaliving Trytsman. On the 8th of February 2010, Uwe Gemballa was kidnapped on his arrival at OR Tambo International Airport on February 8, 2010. He apparently believed he was meeting a businessman named Jerome Safi to discuss Safi opening a franchise of the Gemballa sports car business. Safi was, in fact, working for Krejcir at the time. Safi did not go to the airport to meet his guest. One of the men who pleaded guilty to Gemballa's unalived, Thabiso Mpai, described to police how Gemballa fell into the hands of two other men, named Kizzer and Madala. Mpai said Gemballa was taken to a house, identified by police as being rented by Krejcir's business manager, Ivan Savov, where he was later suffocated. Savov has claimed he was out of the country at the time and has denied Gemballa was unalived at his home. It was reported that police had linked a cell phone used to phone Gemballa's wife to pay-as-you-go vouchers purchased on behalf of a Krejcir associate, Michael Arsiotis. At the time, a waitress said she had been sent to buy the vouchers by Arsiotis, who was sitting with Krejcir, Safi, Smith, and two unidentified men. His body was found in 27th September 2010. On the 3rd of May 2010, strip club owner Lolly Jackson was murdered, allegedly by George Smith, the Cyprus-born fugitive who worked for Krejcir, and is said to be in hiding in Cyprus. Earlier evidence obtained by security specialist Paul O'Sullivan disclosed a money laundering scheme entered into between Krejcir and Jackson. The two also lived in the same street and shared an interest in supercars. Cyril Beeka played a key role in Krejcir's life in South Africa, although it appears that mistrust developed between the two men shortly before Beeka was unalived. Beeka initially served as Krejcir's security consultant, but later the two set up plans to go into gold trading and a gold refinery business together. Beeka and Krejcir shared a love of fast cars and motorbikes and would race their toys at Kyalami racetrack, several sources have confirmed. But the relationship between Krejcir and Beeka soured, notably after an incident at Beeka's birthday party in Cape Town in November. Cape Town club owner Jerome Boyson has confirmed that Beeka was returning from a meeting with him in Belhar when he was unalived. Intelligence sources claim Krejcir met one of Boyson's business associates, Mark Liffman, about 3 weeks before Beeka was unalived. Iaan Jordaan, a financial advisor closely linked to Radovan Krejcir, was also in charge of managing the estate of Lolly Jackson, the slain strip club tycoon. In 2013, Jordaan became entangled in a violent episode. He was kidnapped and coerced into transferring 1.6 million rand from a trust account holding some of Jackson's funds into a Bidvest account belonging to Mark Andrews, a former associate of Jackson. This forced transaction occurred amid growing tensions and criminal dealings involving Krejcir and his network. Jordaan's fate took a grim turn when on September 20th, 2013, his burnt remains was discovered. In a gruesome detail, his teeth were missing, likely an attempt to delay identification. However, investigators were able to identify him through a piece of his shirt left on the body. His unaliving, shrouded in mystery and brutality, is believed to be connected to his involvement with Krejcir's operations and possibly part of an effort to silence him as investigations into Krejcir's criminal empire intensified. Mark Andrews was later shot on the 28th of September 2011 and dumped on the side of the road. Chris Couremetis, known in Johannesburg underworld circles as Mr. Dogfood, was shot and unalived by two men armed with an AK-47 and a 9mm handgun on the 10th of October 2010 as he was leaving a wedding reception at the Cradle restaurant in Muldersdrift. The alleged hit happened 2 months after the Hawks received a tip-off about a shipment of dog food arriving at the port of Nkura near Port Elizabeth. The police seized more than 166 kilograms of dog food hidden in the metal pillars of a container transporting used cooking oil. At the time, several intelligence sources revealed that Couremetis was suspected by some of his unnamed partners of having orchestrated the bust in the hopes of recovering part of the. On the 24th of July 2013, Radovan Krejcir, who was a director of Moneypoint, a gold and diamonds pawn shop on Bradford Road in Bedfordview, had been visiting the business at the time. He drove his black Mercedes-Benz AMG into the parking lot of the business between 10:30 a.m. and 11 a.m., parking perpendicular to a red VW Polo Cross. Business agents at Remax 1, which shares the premises with Moneypoint, revealed that the vehicle in the past 3 to 4 days, but each had assumed the car's driver was visiting the other businesses. Wednesday morning, its back was positioned opposite to where Krejcir was about to park, outside the Remax real estate building. Krejcir revealed that he was taking a phone call after having just got out of his vehicle. He said he had taken 3 steps when he heard a loud popping noise that he initially thought could be fireworks. Unaware of the danger, he continued his phone call. Then bullets flew from a dozen gun barrels built onto the inside of the VW Polo, just behind the license plate. On the 12th of October 2013, Sam Issa, a known dogwood dealer, was sitting in his Audi Q7, allegedly after he had spent the previous evening at Krejcir's Bedfordview Moneypoint gold exchange business. A white Ford Ranger pulled up next to Issa's car and the occupants opened fire. More than 30 shots were fired at his car, unaliving him. Issa, a Lebanese national, had been living illegally in South Africa for 15 years. Radovan Krejcir was linked to this. On the early morning of the 2nd of November 2013, a Serbian national named Veselin Laganin, an associate of Krejcir, was tragically shot dead during a violent house robbery at his home in Bedfordview, east of Johannesburg. The incident occurred around 4 a.m. according to Brigadier Neville Malila. 2 robbers allegedly gained entry to the house through an open window on the first floor. Once inside, they approached Laganin's wife, waking her and instructing her to remain quiet. One of the robbers forcibly removed her ring from her finger, which startled her husband awake. As Laganin awoke, the robbers fired several shots at him, fatally wounding him. His wife, panicked by the violence, screamed and ran out of the flat to call for security. The assailants managed to flee the scene, taking a firearm, cell phones, and 1,000 rand in cash. After their escape, police discovered 2 firearms in a bag left outside the home, though the robbers remained at large. The incident highlighted the ongoing crime and violence in the area, casting a shadow over Bedfordview's sense of security. On the 13th of November 2013, a deadly explosion rocked Bedfordview near the Eastgate shopping mall in the early afternoon. 2 people were unalived, and at least 5 others were injured when a bomb detonated at the corner of Bradford and Nicole Roads. William Netladi, a spokesperson for Ekurhuleni Emergency Services, confirmed the explosion but noted that the cause was still unconfirmed at the time. 2 were declared dead at the scene, while 3 critically injured individuals were rushed to Bedford Gardens Hospital. 2 others sustained minor injuries. Authorities quickly closed off the intersection for security reasons, blocking all traffic from the area. Reports later surfaced that the explosion took place at a shop owned by Radovan Krejcir. As the day went on, police were unsure of Krejcir's whereabouts following the explosion. Brigadier Neville Malilla informed the media that forensic experts and the bomb squad were still combing through the scene, and police were uncertain whether additional explosives were present inside the Moneypoint shop. Preliminary reports suggested that a person had entered the shop with a bag containing the bomb, but further details were still under investigation. In November 2013, Radovan Krejcir's reign of crime began to crumble. On the 22nd of November 2013, Krejcir was dramatically arrested for kidnapping, dog food dealing, and attempted unaliving, bringing his ruthless tactics into the spotlight. Just a few days later, on the 25th of November 2013, Krejcir stood before the court for the first time, facing the mounting charges against him. Meanwhile, the noose was tightening around his international connections. On the 9th of January 2014, 3 arrests were made after police received a tip-off that an attempt on the lives of 2 of the men investigating Czech fugitive Radovan Krejcir was going to take place. A man was arrested before noon on Thursday, and a man and a woman were arrested at 5 p.m. at the Road Lodge on Rivonia Road in Rivonia, northern Johannesburg. It was thought they intended unaliving forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan and crime intelligence officer Colonel Nkosana Jimba. O'Sullivan said he was tipped off about the attempt on his life on Thursday morning. In February 2014, one of his key associates, George Luca, was extradited from Cyprus to South Africa. Luca was a critical link in Krejcir's criminal network and was tied to several explosive allegations. The pressure continued to build in May 2014 when the South African Revenue Service, SARS, dealt Krejcir a financial blow, seizing all of his assets under a preservation order. This move crippled his once vast empire, stripping him of the wealth that had fueled his criminal activities. But the most damning revelations came later. On the 5th of November 2014, George Luca signed 5 crucial affidavits that would unravel the darkest parts of Krejcir's operations. These affidavits became critical in linking Krejcir to a series of violent crimes, including high-profile murders. By the 6th of February 2015, Krejcir was formally charged with the murder of Sam Issa, a known Lebanese dog food dealer. This was a significant development, but it wasn't the last of the shocking revelations. On the 21st of April 2015, Luca testified in court, making a stunning accusation. He claimed that Krejcir was responsible for the murder of Cyril Beeka, and even Brett Kebbel, in addition to revealing that Krejcir had allegedly ordered the unaliving of Teaser's strip club owner, Lolly Jackson, then screaming, "Cockroach." These courtroom revelations painted Krejcir not just as a dog food kingpin, but as a man responsible for some of South Africa's most notorious murders. The once untouchable crime lord now stood at the center of a vast criminal web, with all its violent threads slowly unraveling in courtrooms across the country. The final chapter of Radovan Krejcir's story was filled with desperation and further intrigue. On the 11th of May 2015, one of the most pivotal figures in Krejcir's downfall, George Luca, died in prison from complications relating to his terminal lung cancer. It is allegedly reported that George Luca may have been poisoned in jail. Luca's death silenced a key witness who had exposed Krejcir's involvement in several high-profile murders. As the walls closed in, Krejcir made a desperate attempt to regain his freedom. On the 26th of September 2015, he orchestrated an escape attempt from jail, though it ultimately failed, reinforcing his fate as a prisoner. Meanwhile, other elements of his empire continued to unravel. On the 12th of November 2015, 3 men were found guilty of the unaliving of Uwe Gemballa, a German businessman who had become ensnared in Krejcir's web of crime. Just days later, on the 27th of November 2015, SARS auctioned off Krejcir's properties in Bedfordview and Bloemfontein, stripping him of his last remaining assets. In December 2015, Krejcir was transferred to the maximum security C-Max prison in Kokstad, a move intended to ensure his confinement under stricter conditions. The blow of Krejcir's legal battles came to a head on the 23rd of February 2016, when he was sentenced to 35 years in prison. The same year, on the 8th of March 2016, another dramatic moment unfolded when Kagiso Ledwaba, one of the men convicted of Gemballa's murder, escaped from Palm Ridge Magistrates Court, adding yet another layer of chaos to the criminal saga. Krejcir's efforts to overturn his conviction proved futile. On the 20th of April 2016, he lost his appeal against his conviction and sentence, cementing his fate as one of South Africa's most notorious crime lords, now permanently behind bars. His once sprawling empire of crime had fallen apart, piece by piece, leaving him to face the consequences alone.